Hello, my name is Velindaba, once again, the neuroengineer, and I'm all about transforming leaders from a place of leadership darkness to leadership light. And that's something that I'm truly passionate about. And I just help leaders and I help teams as well using the high performance tool called the Velindaba Neuroengineering Leadership Effect, which is based on the fundamental principles of neuroscience, of engineering, as well as motivation. Because like I always say that there's no one who can ever achieve the best self or achieve the peak of their performance if they are really not inspired or motivated. So motivation from the brain perspective is very important because we are motivated by different things that drive different behaviors and that produce different results. So when you look at results that you produce and you're not happy with them, and then you always have to understand that you may link that back to the motivation that actually drove that behavior which produced that results. Today is a special day once again where I have this exciting guest that we're going to be talking about leadership and talking about sales and discussing all those things because he's a sales master. And I think for me, it's something that I'm very, very, excited about. And the person that I'm going to introduce to you, who's our guest, is Billy Meysel. Billy Meysel is currently a director of sales and marketing working for In Control, the organization that does a lot of highly specialized, I normally say ERP systems, but it's not really an ERP system. I think he's going to take us through that. But when you talk about, systems, he's the man to talk to regarding how you can improve as organizations. But I think my interest here, as you know, that I talk to leaders, especially executive leaders, to get to share with us what's their understanding of leadership. What's the understanding of culture? And are leaders really made or are they born? And things like that. So I think without wasting any more time, let me get Billy just to get to talk to us about, being sales. How was it like, Billy, for you? And before I even just say good morning, I think I've just spoken to you about that. So say good morning, Billy.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity.
Thank you so very much. And I think I'm very much interested, first of all, about understanding who Billy is and how was your upbringing and how was your childhood like? Maybe just in few words. How was it like for you, growing up? How was the environment like? What did you see around you? What did you experience? And what did you experiment? What happened around you?
So my family are immigrants from Germany. And when I was 12, we decided to go back to Europe. But we didn't go to Germany, we went to Italy. Okay. And then we only came back into the country when Nelson Mandela was freed. Okay. And change was in the air. The Iron Curtain had fallen, communism was dead. Okay. That type of happening in the world. So from an early age on, because of change of culture, I had to learn to adapt to new types of environments quite quickly. First of all, to very traditional Afrikaans way of growing up, conservative Afrikaans, German, and then the Italian way, and which was very, very different to South African culture at the time. Kids didn't have to wear uniforms. Kids didn't get hit at school. I don't know if you remember that. There was still that thing going on here. And the cultural differences creates an open mind. And as a salesperson, I believe that that is one of the key features that you you have to excel at. You have to be incredibly a lot of empathy. And empathy, people that are very full of empathy are also very emotional. So that's a little bit of a paradox, because a good salesperson must have a thick skin as well and be able to get a lot of no's. It's like a young man trying to get a girl on a date. You keep on asking, you get a lot of no's. So most young men try not to ask. But in my experience, empathy is everything. empathy, persistency, and being able to motivate yourself. And that's how you get a good salesperson identified. It's not, long ago, it used to be something like sex sells. You know, you get a couple of very pretty ladies and you can sell anything. That's such old-fashioned thinking.
Wow.
These days, it's all about knowledge of how the brain works.
Yes.
It's all about can you build a business idea that creates value and continuously provides value to your customer.
Yes.
And you have to know your subject matter.
Okay.
You have to realize the value propositions.
Okay. No, I think we're going to get to that, and I love that. I just wanted to firstly get your, that part, your take on in terms of, you growing up and seeing things and looking at around you. And thank you very much for sharing that with us. I mean, that at least you got some exposure, in terms of different cultures and different regions, internationally, which is something that's very important. And now, because I'm very interested, when I meet different people from different fields of studies and from different industries. And what always excites me is just trying to figure out how they got into, those chosen fields of theirs. Like for you, when it comes to sales, I mean, you're a sales director now, and even before, you held an executive role where you were a general manager of sales, and then, I'm not going to count even going backwards, but you've been a senior leader, you've been an executive for quite a number of years. But what got you into sales? What led you into sales? I mean, like to say, I'm a salesman, this is what I do, and
Passion.
I'm going to do this.
Passion. It really was passion. I paid for my studies, part paid for my studies with waitering, and I like to see myself, and that's what I also tell my son and my godchild. It's all about becoming part of the 20%.
Okay.
It's the Pareto effect.
Yes.
You get people that do work without passion, and they kind of are there for the salary, and then you get the 20% that are the pillars of that company.
Okay.
And they've got all the fun, and I wanted to be part of that. So even in the restaurant industry, I considered myself to be a really good waiter, and by being a really good waiter, I was making most tips, but I was also enjoying myself because I was able to sell a lot better.
Yes. So would you say waitering as well had a lot of influence? It actually made you realize that, hey, I'm good at this.
Yes.
And look at the tips that I'm getting, compared to others.
Yes,
So,
and it's
so,
fun.
so did that actually influence your decision to, when you went to university,
Yes.
to study, to say, I want to do this?
Not really. When I wanted to, I didn't know if I wanted to study or not. A very good friend of mine who unfortunately passed away recently, he literally wrote me into my course. He decided that I'm going to become I'm going to do this Bachelor of Arts communication type of study line.
Wow.
And I then specialized in persuasion. I've got an honors degree in persuasive communication.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So it kind of like it comes from there, but I wanted to really become a journalist. But remember, it was 92. It was 92, 93.
Yes.
Those were wonderful years in South Africa.
Yeah.
I studied at UJ. At the time, it was called RAU.
Yes.
And we had a professor that was flown in from Boston. Amazing woman, amazing professor. And she was going through critical theories, Habermas, and I found that so complex and so interesting, that whole idea of diffusion of innovation into cultures and how difficult that is, that I obviously fell for it, and I then decided to do my honors. I even got a bursary to do my masters, but I didn't do it. I then got to know my wife at the time, and life took over. I went back to Austria, but from there, the idea of being able to try and convince somebody of my way of thinking, that's where it was born.
Yeah.
Okay,
Wow.
and then obviously logistics. I am specialized. I love supply chain. I've got a true passion for the idea of supply chain. The two combined forced me into that area of selling. Yeah.
Wow. So I think your specialization as well, like you have an honors degree, in sort of like persuasion.
Yeah.
And sales is mostly about persuasion.
Yes.
I mean, so
But it's not
naturally,
trickery.
somehow, but yeah.
It's not trickery. For me, it's science. It's
Yeah.
like what you do.
Yeah.
For me, it's I found your idea about the brain and how you can affect certain areas. I mean, how did you get into it? Where does your passion stem from? Is this something that you can relate to? I'm very interested.
Wow. So when it comes to the brain, I think for me, when I look back, I mean, I think even growing up, I've always been a very passionate person, but let alone passion, I think I've always been inquisitive. I'm a very curious person. I've always been asking myself questions. Why are people behaving this way? Why are they doing this? But I couldn't do, like psychology, growing up, and then I did engineering, and I think that's something for me that led me, to really answer certain questions when it comes to deep questions, using science, not emotions. Because people they reason emotionally, most of them. Oh, this thing is not going to work, or this thing is going to work, but what is it based on? So I always like to use mathematics and using like things like statistics or something like that. And because engineering is a practical thing, I wanted to understand what drives, like machines, what drives sort of like, like the systems that we have. And later on, that actually led me to want to understand human behavior. And that's when, after I've studied engineering and doing stats and doing applied mathematics and doing project management, and then I got into neuro-linguistic programming. But I got more, fascinated by the brain. Because, like when you look at the studies, everyone is just saying some things. There are a lot of myths out there. For an example, the one that says you can't teach an old dog new tricks. It's even an insult to an old dog. Because when you think of that, scientifically now, it's been proven over and over again that a human brain keeps on growing until you die, depending on how you use it. So people didn't have that information. We didn't have that information. So right now, so that's what I do. So that's what got me into really understanding and getting involved in neuroscience and getting to understand not just only neuroscience. I bring in different elements to it, like things like I've always been passionate about philosophy, asking existential questions. What is life? What is love? Why are we alive? And things like those. So I think for me, it's something that is something that is deep. And I always want to find things that are a bit deeper, that are not shallow, things that will help us to understand the science behind things.
Yeah.
So I'm more fascinated by understanding what drives that. In engineering, we learned about first principles thinking, which is looking not just at the what level, but at the how and the why. Why does it happen this way, and how does it happen this way? Rather than saying, oh, this is what is happening, just get over it. So I think this curious nature of mine is the one that has led me into this, because anything that is complex, it calls my name. I just want to dive into it. And that's the reason why this is how I got into this.
And sales is for me the same type of passion. I feel affronted sometimes when people think that sales is just some kind of people that can do trickery. The saying that you can sell snow to an Eskimo is, I feel, undervaluing the science of sales. In my opinion, if you are a good business builder, then you're a good salesperson. If you can create value, a mutually beneficial value to yourself, to your company, and to your customer's company, then you're a true salesperson. Sustainable value.
Yes.
And sometimes you just know that your solution is correct, that you've built the right vision and you've presented it, and then you think, but I must have presented it incorrectly. I've done something wrong. This person is not accepting what I'm telling them. He's not seeing my vision.
Yes.
And that's what irritates me, and that's why I always try to focus on body language. I try to focus on ideas, trying to always learn new avenues into the person's defensive mechanism.
Yes.
Because everybody has that. Remember, we are living in a world where communication is so so overwhelming.
Yes,
The
true
technology of communication has become so incredibly overwhelming that you're bombarded with information.
Yes.
And people that think that they are very unique are not really unique.
Yeah.
Your customer or your opportunity has long time heard this often.
Yes.
And you need to get past, you need to be different. You need to be somebody that really has empathy with this person's key performance issues and create that vision with them.
Yeah, and it's just saying that maybe just to ask you something, and just maybe before the question, I remember Brian Tracy. He's a sales master. When it comes to he's a sales master, and I loved it. I remember I was listening to him some years back when he said, sales is a very funny job because when people don't have skills, they just say no, just put him into sales. Because sales, let him just sell. And they didn't understand that there's science, in selling. But he was very fascinated by what makes a person a good salesman. Because when he joined organizations, there will be someone who is ranked number one, in selling. And yet there will be others who were just following. And he was always interested in what makes those people. And I think this makes me ask you a question. What did you say maybe are the 3 or 4, personality traits, that make a person a good salesman? What would you say to someone like who wants to get into sales, or maybe they're into sales right now, but they're battling? They want to break that barrier. They want to get to the top. What would you say are maybe some few, skills and sort of like even personality traits that people need to have in order for them to be best at what they do, to be good at selling?
Well, it's the normal thing. Really, it's the hard work and really putting in the hours inside this profession, and it's got to be seen as a profession. Like you say, a lot of companies don't see the value of sales at all. They sometimes feel that they've got enough things that they are already selling, and sales are coming in. Why look at more growth?
Yes.
I've been with companies where the idea of having salespeople on board was completely strange to them. They didn't realize or the significance of having a company that grows. So to aspiring salespeople, I would say if you are able and have the ability to be true and honest and be able to show that passion in the product that you have, and you're able to put together a sales story and a vision, then you're in the right place.
And you spoke about passion as well. Maybe just another question to that. Would you say sales people are born, or are they made, or is it? What did you say around that based on what you've seen? Is it something that you're born with, or is it something that you can make? Can anyone, become a salesman,
I don't think salesman? So. I really don't think so.
Okay.
I think it depends. At the moment, unfortunately, a lot on luck, and I also think, for example, that new technologies will not replace the salespeople, because I think the percentage is quite high, as far as I can remember from sales masters courses that I've looked at. It is still around 75% of all deals that are made on a handshake. Building that trust relationship with an individual is everything. If you, especially if you try and sell not a product, but even then, but solution selling, you're trying to build something together specifically for the customer, like for example our In Control platform, which is uniquely configurable to each customer's requirements. Those things are so complex and so disruptive in that person's environment, in that person's company, that you really have to know what you're doing from a sales point of view. They really need to trust you so you can get past those barriers of change.
Wow, that's that's where now when I run workshops for sales teams, I talk about neurosales. So neurosales it's about selling with the brain in mind. It talks to issues of how do you get inside the person's thinking brain, because the brain is divided into basically three. You've got the reptilian brain, which is the ancient brain. Then you've got a part of it as well that is called the emotional brain. That's the one that processes emotions and the one that ensures that we are, our emotions are taken care of. And then we've got the highly evolved one, which is the cortex, especially we talk about the prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking part of the brain. This is the part of the brain that does decision making. This is the part of the brain that does strategy. This is the part of the brain that does planning. And when you look at buying, it's got to do with decision making. And you don't want to really scare people in your approach that they end up not really thinking well to make decisions. So I take them through, this brain and understanding, and also to help them change the terminology of selling to say we are not selling, but we are solving problems.
A trusted advisor.
So absolutely. So ultimately the question is, what problem are you solving? Because many people who are selling, they just tell. They just dump information and they say you need this, but who has said that I need it? So it means you need to listen more and ask more questions and listen to what the pain is and where the pain is before you can be able to come and say, this is the solution. And would you mind trying this? So the language is important. Then say, this is something that's going to work for you. And when you say, would you mind trying this thing out? Because I believe this will help you after having listened to them. But many people who are selling, they don't listen to clients. They just tell them, this is what I'm selling. So I'm saying when I help teams, it's not about providing a solution or telling people what to do, but it's about listening to the problems that they have and suggesting the best way of solving those problems. So you are not just selling a product, but you are solving a client's or a potential client's problem. So I think that's something that's very important.
Yes,
That's how we do it.
Agreed.
And maybe moving on, moving right along, coming back to the issue of leadership. We've spoken about these things, and when it comes to leadership, for you, there are good leaders and there are also bad leaders. We talk about leadership toxicity, we talk about leadership darkness here. So for you, when you talk about someone who's a good leader, and maybe even someone a bad leader, I think maybe it's going to be, the opposite of a good leader. Maybe if we talk about a good leader, what did you say? What are the qualities of a good leader? When you say someone is a good leader, overall, what are we looking at? What do we mean that a leader is a good leader?
I think in terms of the energy levels that a leader needs to bring into the team, that's quite significant, a significant factor. Wow. These days, I think there's been an erosion of leadership, especially since COVID times, but even before that. A good leader needs to be able to be inclusive. A good leader needs to be able to not only bring in motivation with his energy, but also allow the energy to develop and bound and be sympathetic with the members of the team to create a trusting environment. You are a good leader if the people in your team speak up and bring up ideas and say, listen, Billy, I think you got something wrong there. I think you've missed this.
Yes.
And you as a good leader are then supposed to be able to say, you're right, I actually missed that, thank you for that. And reward the person so that everybody else can see that, leadership is also a trust basis.
Wow.
And that's how leadership has developed. Imagine the hierarchy, I struggle with the word, of the olden days. We had the founder, who is, this is my way and this is how we're going to play it, and it's always been working like this. Generally, if those people try then to develop a bigger company, to grow the company, they will then struggle to keep people because they try from their leadership style to control the whole environment. Yes. The complexities start to become so massive, and that the leader who walks the trenches the whole time cannot get to everything. Yes. And the managers that he might have employed to manage and help him manage are too scared to say anything because all the decisions go to this person anyway. Yes. And that's a toxic environment. That's where you are going to have a stopping growth.
Yes.
So what you try to do in also with trust is create the impression that everybody has the same goal.
Yes.
And then try to see where the efficiencies lies, and a good leader is supposed to take out of the any kind of stones out of the team's ability to move forward.
Yes.
So anything in that direction, I think, is a good leader. And
so with what you have said, I mean, I think it also indicates that it means as a leader, you've got to be willing to listen to other people's views, and be willing to be vulnerable as well, because I mean that's something, because you cannot have trust if you're not vulnerable. You've got to be able to speak up, but that takes a lot of confidence as well for you to say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm wrong here. Oh no, I missed the point there. Many people, I mean, obviously
play around with that. You kind of can play around with those emotions. Build up. Mentorship comes in there very, very strongly, because it's a give and take. So a leader will have mentees, and the mentees will also assist the mentor in becoming a very good leader. It's a back and forth, and good leaders are able to bring in innovations into their team, and are able to also pivot the company and make it more agile, and get those pockets of opportunity, leverage against them, and move quicker and grow the company quicker.
So it's to be agile.
Yes.
I mean, like to be able
agility,
to agility
is crucial. I mean, look at what happened with COVID. All of a sudden, you were not allowed to go to work. So which companies survived COVID? The companies that were more innovative, and that accepted innovations and tried to work through it. Those are the companies that grew. All the other companies that didn't refuse to, because the old way is the best way, why change something that's not broken? They failed. They were gone.
So they got exposed in a big way. So it's very unfortunate. I think this is something, and I just love this, and I think the way it actually going, because it's important to talk about these issues. I mean, you call it a founder's syndrome.
Yes.
Where people have founded these organizations that have grown so much, but they still want to keep the same sort of like power and control on everything, because they know how they used to do those things, and they get frustrated. And then when you come up with new ideas, then they wouldn't take it.
Yes.
Because it's their way or highway.
Yes.
Which is just very unfortunate.
Which is the reason why I got involved with In Control. Precisely because of that. For me, a company where the owner and the founder, and that's most of the companies in South Africa. I mean, we got very big companies, but the companies that we are looking at to promote in South Africa, because of the higher unemployment rates, are really SMEs. And SMEs, generally, you have the first generation, the brilliant person, the brilliant entrepreneur, the founder, who brings in a niche idea and makes money out of it. Great for that person. But what is that value of the company without that person in it?
Absolutely.
They cannot sell it.
They cannot.
The company's lifespan is only as long as that founder is involved. So companies need to be able to bring everything in that person's mind into a platform that forces the individuals in that company to keep on working. So the In Control platform, which digitizes all the process flows, like ISO or like Six Sigma, it literally digitizes all those processes and works like a neural network inside the company. So for the value of the company, that increases it dramatically, because there's a scalability.
Yes, the scalability. And now I'm just thinking as well, I mean, of someone who wants to be a sales and marketing director for this huge organization, and for that, my question to you is, what are the three, if maybe it comes to mind, three or whatever, what really keeps you awake at night?
From a sales point of view, a sales director point of view, obviously I'm responsible for top line. So for me, revenue is everything. I look at how I can increase that revenue with any way possible. So my concerns are always trying to find more ways to sell, get through certain barriers, and also understand where the glass ceilings are of the company itself. So one of the glass ceilings that we have identified recently is the implementation phase. So we discovered that because it's solution selling, we discovered that we have very long sales cycles. Okay, so you need to build up that trusting relationship until people or the decision makers, we speak about white caps, red caps, and black caps inside a company. Yes. So you may be speaking entry level to a decision maker, but he's not the only decision maker.
Yes.
He still needs to sell your idea, your vision that you guys have built together to the red cap, to the decision maker inside the company.
So how is that a hierarchy or level built up? Is it the white cap?
So it depends.
Cap,
it's really from a sales coaching point of view.
Okay.
It's something that you decide with your sales team.
Okay.
So for us, it's a white cap is somebody that doesn't really have a decision-making power.
Okay.
A black cap does have, and that's usually the entry level that you want to get to.
Yes.
And the red cap is usually somebody that you don't see until you have convinced all the black caps.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
so that's the top dog.
I wanted to understand that. Yeah.
Yes, and
the buck stops with them.
Yes, and obviously other sales coaches might have different ways of defining these, and they might talk about different types of personalities, from a diffusion of innovation point of view, for example, that would be, the late acceptors of innovation, because they're generally more conservative. That would be your CEO type of person.
Yes. Okay.
But the early adopters would be generally, hopefully, the person that you're currently speaking to when you try to make a deal that changes certain things. We prefer, for example, to deal with people that are relevant from an operational point of view.
Okay.
So we wouldn't be speaking to a finance manager, we would be speaking to an operations director or to a sales director or to somebody who is part of the operational functionality of the organization.
Yes.
And that's the person that we would be then dealing with, and the sales cycle takes long. Now, the problem that we have is once he's accepted the idea and once he's signed the contract, we only starting to introduce the innovation, and that implementation can take quite a long while.
Wow.
If you are not careful. So you have to kind of make sure that there's no scope creep. You have experience with project management. You will know exactly what I'm talking about.
I know exactly that.
Yes. For example, it can go horribly wrong. Recently in the news there was a failed implementation attempt by a huge retailer that cost them 500 million rand. And it was a failed attempt of introducing an ERP. So you can imagine the risk for your company.
Jeez,
yeah,
that is quite huge. And now, maybe when you look at, we've just spoken about when looking at the science of selling, and we're looking at things like, leadership, because all these things, they influence, one another, they influence each other. Now, when you look at culture, because we talk a lot about organizational culture, where organizations, they bring in a high-performing individual. They have their MBAs, they've studied abroad, some of them. They've even worked globally.
MBA guys, that was mentioned they have an MBA,
yes,
right?
and they come to join this organization because they've seen this person as a star performer.
Yeah.
Now, how does culture influence these people that end up not performing their best? How would you think culture influences leadership? Is it leadership that influences culture,
Always.
or is it culture that influences leadership?
Depends.
I know that
I hear what
close
you're
relationship.
saying.
Yes.
In my opinion, it's leadership is responsible for the culture of the company, and that's one of the variables for leaders in this new era. Post-COVID, you are responsible for the culture in your company. If you make it high energy, sales driven, that is because the leadership is there doing that. If you're not doing it and you've got a high turnover of people and you don't see it, it's very, very paradox. Most toxic environment leaders are not capable of realizing that they're the reason for the toxicity in that company. They see the people that are leaving as the enemy. They see them as saying, you guys are the losers. You're not strong enough to be here. And it's good riddance, and that's so wrong. It means that you have missed an opportunity of gaining everything out of that person that person might bring to the table, because every person has incredible talents that you just need to be able to get out of them. That best performance that you can get out of that person is not necessarily maybe what you can produce or anybody else. It's just you need to find that little nugget and bring it to the forefront. It's beautiful to see when it comes out.
And that's something that is actually called collective genius.
Yes.
Collective genius is the ability to tap into each individual's, slice of genius.
Yes.
Because we're all different. We all bring different, skills and different energy levels and
Yes.
bring different, unique things,
Correct.
into the table. But a leader is someone, a good leader that is someone that will be able to put a blend of those things together, just to put them together,
Yes.
to create that element of peak performance.
Yes.
Because we talk about peak performance culture, because I always say that you cannot have a peak performing team if you don't have a peak performance culture.
Agreed.
And when you talk about a peak performance culture, it's all about individuals feeling, respected, feeling that they belong, because these are all the things that the brain is looking for. We're
And
talking about
wanting to
social
come to work.
expectations and wanting to come to work.
Because they want that energy. They need that energy after a while.
Absolutely. When they're not at work, they feel very lonely.
Yes.
They want to find themselves in the workplace.
Correct.
And do that. So I think those are the kinds of things. And in terms of when you've looked at the culture and whatever, have you worked for organizations where you realize and you looked at it and said, wow, we've got serious culture problems here?
Yes. And the one company that I worked for, the way I managed to gain trust was by introducing process flows, by introducing a clear relationship between what I expect of the employee in terms of a job description, KPIs, and what the job really entails.
Yes.
So there was a clarity between the two. And we would have, for example, quarterly performance appraisals with the individual, and it would be one-on-one meetings, and it would be also a clear definition of the vision and the mission of the company.
Yes.
But not only you would see a lot of SMEs kind of, that's the first thing they put onto their website, our mission, our vision, and it's always the same nonsense.
Yeah.
For me, that was really quite crucial that we lived it. That it was a family type of culture, that it was this, each member was respected for what they could bring to the table. We would clearly define what it was and we'd go to this person. I would introduce, for example, the targets for the year, and I would have my leaders in various departments, and I would go and pitch the idea to them before I even would go to the CEO and pitch the idea to him.
Wow.
Just to make sure that I got the buy-in.
Yes.
Is this possible, what I'm planning?
Yes. Wow, that's fantastic. So that tells you that culture is that's why Peter Drucker spoke about it, to say culture will have your strategy for breakfast. It will have it for supper and for dinner and for everything else. So without having a proper culture, your strategy means nothing.
Yes, and leaders influence culture.
Absolutely.
You have to get good leaders that have good energy levels, that can bring in the idea that innovations are not always a bad thing.
And I like it. Lee Iacocca, I'm not sure if you're aware of him. Lee Iacocca was one of the CEOs of Ford Motor Companies.
Okay.
And also he got fired there after, taking the company to the top in the US. And then he went and he was hired or employed by Chrysler Motors, in the States. Also, he took it to the next level and he retired there. But he said something, actually wrote a book to say, where have all the leaders gone? I think what we're talking about there, when we talk about leaders that will be able to create a culture that will lead to peak performance, we seem to be having a shortage of such leaders. Instead, leaders are involved in squabbles and toxicity and all those things, which is very unfortunate.
I see companies a little bit like I see individuals. So for me, a company, if it's working well together, it becomes an individual. It becomes a organism.
Yes.
And that organism, obviously, it's a little bit like a motor car, the engine. If something is not working, the clockwork eventually kind of starts going completely haywire.
Very
And
true.
from all parts pulling into the same directions, you get a much better speed, a much better motion than as something that doesn't really want to work together. So some companies that have a high market share, that are really strong and know exactly what they're selling and have been in business for many years, they seem to, it kind of like in undulates.
Yes.
They seem to be then less accepting of any kind of innovation or the concept thereof, because they feel that they don't need to.
I think this leads me to the next question that I wanted to ask you as well, so that as well our listeners and our viewers can get to see this. I think you've alluded to something early on. We spoke about how COVID-19 exposed a lot of companies, how it actually caught many companies wanting. Now, I just want to ask the question of the importance of innovation. Why is it important that companies must keep on innovating and sort of like keep on bringing out new ideas and coming up with this? Why must companies innovate?
In my opinion, it's the first rule is, if your company is not growing to maximum potential, then basically you are on the way to liquidation. Simple as that. A company that has a growth rate that is below CPI is a company that's doomed. You need to get out of that as quickly as possible. Growth is everything. That's the only reason why you have a company.
Yes.
Either you are creating profit for your shareholders, or you are only for yourself because you might have a small SME. But the whole point of a company is not to have a steady salary. The point of any type of organism is to grow and to multiply.
Yes.
And that is what a company does. So the only way you can grow these days is by embracing change. Because obviously what you've been doing so far is not giving you growth anymore. And that's why diffusion of innovation is such a complex and necessary step that each company needs to be dealing with. Also from a leadership point of view. Because just by introducing change, you keep also your company's culture also quite clean. It's interesting for people to work in an environment where it's not like on a conveyor belt. Every day the same thing. Fortunately, we're not in those dark ages anymore. We are allowed to be respectful and passionate about the things that we do. And since COVID, the big thing that has changed is the attitude of the employees. They know that what you do and the time that you have is limited.
Yes.
You can literally get sick and die. Okay, from today to tomorrow. It's a horrible concept.
Unfortunately.
But we all had to deal with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I in June 2020 was really sick. I didn't know if I would make it.
Jeez.
And certain things happen in my life where I'm thinking, I need to do things that I really enjoy. I need to really spend time and do the things that I want. And I'm not talking about work-life balance. I think that's an old notion. I think if you find true passion, and it is by coincidence work, and it's hopefully work, then it's something that you need to do 24/7. You need to be thinking about it all the time. I'm sure you do that.
Absolutely.
I mean, I can see the passion. We have to be part of the 20%. Whatever you do. And employees are now a lot more discerning. If your company does not have a good culture, you will have turnover. People don't have loyalty anymore. Why should they? There's not enough time to do that.
Yeah. Life is too short,
Correct.
As they say. and maybe on that one, maybe just to wrap up that part, where we talk about the issues of right now, COVID disrupted everything, that we know it to be, and people talk about a new normal, but it's not only a new normal, it's a normal now. I know some people are still waiting for some things to go back, to where they used to be, which is unfortunately, it's just a pipe dream. That will never get to happen again. This is where we are. Now, my question is, what have you found to be working out between, do you believe in this hybrid, work approach where people work from home and others, which one is better? How would you say, do you think it works nicely?
I really believe, and I know it sounds odd, but I really believe in energy levels. of each individual. I believe that if you get nice energy levels, people that have high energy levels together, it more than doubles that energy level.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm a firm believer in not working from home. I enjoy people to be together as often as possible.
Okay.
Because in supply chain, things happen that you have to be on your toes the whole time. I don't know if you've ever dealt with anybody that's in transport, but we generally don't sleep. It's kind of like things happen constantly.
Yeah,
so it's always
you've got
nice
to
to hear, open office plan.
Yes.
Hear people, feel the energy. Enjoy life.
Because I know there are people that will actually skin you alive, when they hear that. To say, no, I want to work at home. And part of what I've actually seen, with people, when you ask them why most of them enjoy working from home, is not only the benefits that come with it in terms of, transportation or fuel price. It's mainly about office politics. To say there are too many meetings that are beyond me, that I'm not supposed even to attend, and also too much office politics, and it gives me that reprieve. It gives me that opportunity to be away from the office, not because it's not a good thing to be there, but I think for me, emotionally and otherwise, it's toxic for me.
Yeah.
And I found that a lot, whenever I ask people why do they enjoy working from home. It's mainly around those things, to say, when I'm home, I'm more productive, because at work, there's so much disruption and everything. But I think that's another topic that we're going to have, some time. And what I wanted to find out from you as well, and with all these things, because we're talking about leadership, we're talking about selling, and people don't just become there overnight. It's a process.
Yes.
What did you say is the influence of mentorship? Have you been mentored before?
Yes.
What's your view of mentorship? Why is it such an important thing? If it is important, is it important first of all? And if it is, why is it important, and how is it important?
I think a mentorship is hugely important. It creates good leaders, because it generally you don't want to look badly in front of somebody that looks up at you. You see your respect is earned, and you don't want to fall short of that respect ever. Yes. So I've tended to keep contact with people that I've worked with many years ago, and the same applies to people that have worked with me. And if somebody has taken you under his wing, or her wing in this case, I will definitely always remember that, and try to game up, to try and be at that level that she expects me to be, and that I think she wants me to be at.
Yes.
And I think that applies to when I do the mentorship myself. And I think it was Einstein that said, if you're able to explain something very simply to somebody, then you really understand it.
Absolutely.
So I think that's also part of it. It's something that you're deeply passionate about. You want to kind of like raise it with everybody. You could kind of want to make them feel the same. So that's part of it. And it's also good for the corporate culture. Yes. So if you have a good company that's got a lovely culture, you need to get mentors, and you need to try and get people to want to mentor each other, because it's good for the pass on over the generations of the culture that's prevalent, and that's good for the company.
Absolutely, because right now what you see as well, you look at it in terms of succession planning.
Yeah.
I mean, like R&B has just hired. I mean, the CEO, I think Mary Vilagazi. I mean, like the first woman to be a CEO of the organization. But I'm just saying, as someone who's been developed from within the organization. But to look at Pick and Pay at the same time, I mean, they had to call someone in, I mean, like Mr. Saunders, I mean, which has taken about 16 years. I mean, he had retired 16 years ago. But they've brought him back because they had to let go of the current CEO. Now that makes you ask some questions, to say, someone retired 16 years ago, and that person has been brought back now because the current CEO
we don't need to
problems.
look further than Eskom.
Absolutely, with Eskom. So it means there's no pipeline of leaders that are being developed. So it comes back to the issue of the lack of mentorship and succession planning. So I think that's something that is very important to say. When you look at many organizations, they only have few leaders that they've actually groomed. And also, I am sure that the reason, or one of the reasons, to that is that the staff turnover is uncontrollable because the culture is not stable. So people, they keep on leaving the organization and coming in. So there's no stability going forward. So how do you then develop someone if there's no stability and people are not made to feel that they belong in an organization, which is something that's a problem.
It is.
And now, Billy, maybe before I ask you, maybe the last question, our final question,
sure.
Is maybe very interesting. From your side, is there anything that maybe you'd like to ask or whatever, want to know more about, maybe the brain or something?
Yes,
what did you
so from, you mentioned earlier there's 3 portions of the brain,
Yes.
the reptilian being one of them.
Yes.
One of the ideas that I had from a sales point of view is to get past the reptilian brain
Yes.
And try and get my vision in with the obviously with the customer from a rational point of view.
Yes.
But I found it quite often difficult to make sure that my vision is clearly understood.
Yes.
Do you have any kind of tricks in that? How do you do that?
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. So that's a reason why, when I run my workshops and I do my talks, I get to, to take the participants through, how the brain works, so that you understand the brain's evolution as well. Because all of us are basically we are the victims of evolution. Call it the victims of evolution because the brain has been wired the way it is hardwired by evolution. So the brain is mainly about survival. It's not about the primary thing. I talk about the hierarchy of the brain when I talk about the brain's operating principle, and start off with with survival. It means the brain is about self-preservation. So first of all, I've got to ensure that I am safe where I am. So when you talk with me and I don't feel that I'm safe with you, I'm going to build this wall in front of me. And I'm going to be hearing you saying blah, 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 blah. So it means you've lost me. So the first thing when you sort of you converse with people, you've got to make them feel comfortable, that they are safe. Because the brain, that's what it does without you being even conscious of it. It's very unconscious. That kind of process. And then the second one is now it becomes this issue of energy. The brain saves energy. So there are so many things that are coming to the brain through the nervous system. You've got about 11 million bits of data at any given second.
Yeah.
But the brain, only the thinking brain that is, which is the prefrontal cortex, it only has about, it can only process about 50 bits of data per second. Now you think of that huge compression from 11 million to 50 bits of data.
Wow.
So what that actually tells you is that the
prioritizes.
brain, absolutely, it prioritizes. And now how does it do that? It does that by creating habits. So the habits, that's why you end up doing things a certain way without even thinking, because the brain has mastered that as a way of saving energy. So if therefore you're doing something and it makes it look like, it's like something that it always does or it has seen before, it assumes. That's why we've got biases. And I get to teach about those things. When you get into you go to spa. When you go to spa, there are about 5 queues where you need to buy or go and pay at the till. Which one do you go for? You go for the shortest one.
Always, yeah.
But when you go for the shortest one, it has not always proven to be true that the shortest one is the moving one. It's mostly the one that is problematic. They're waiting for something and whatever. But the brain doesn't think of that. It just goes for that because it's a bias. That's something as well in engineering is called heuristics, which are the rules of thumb. So the brain has automated certain things. That's why now we talk about autopilot. So I unpack these things, in my workshops where I get to talk about why we behave the way we do and how the brain has come to that, because the thinking brain is very limited. It's powerful, but it's weak. That's why most of the time it gets bullied by the emotional brain, because the emotional brain, evolutionarily speaking, is much older than the thinking brain. The thinking brain only evolved later. That's why the other one, therefore, is called the reptilian brain, because it started in reptiles. And then it came to mammals. And then we are more highly evolved. And the thinking is different because now we've got the cortex, and this is the part that actually does all these intricate stuff. We are the only species that can do that. I mean, like, we are the only species that can strategize. You look at the monkeys, look at the lions, they only think for the moment. They just think on the here and now. They don't plan for tomorrow. They don't know what there is. So with us, therefore, it's very important, especially when you are doing selling, that you're not really selling, problem solving, we call it selling as well. But when you do selling, you want to engage people. You want to firstly deal with their fears. Because when you don't deal with their fears and their concerns in terms of survival, then you have lost them. Because it means there's no trust. So it's about building trust. That's why, therefore, I help organizations build trust. I help organizations create or have this emotional intelligence. Because everyone is talking about emotional intelligence, but what is that? So we're talking about emotions because there's emotional brain and there's intelligence because there's this intelligent brain. So these are two different things that are fighting against each other. But emotions are evolutionarily much stronger because they're about survival. So the reptilian brain is about survival, breathing and everything. That's why when someone feels threatened, they become very, very, aggressive. So that part of aggression is natural. So people need to be trained to understand themselves better, why they behave the way they do. So that's something that excites me because we delve deeper into it. It's not something that I feel, what I feel. It's based on so many studies, from fMRI scans, from EEG scans, and then because it tells you about the here and now. You are able to see exactly what's happening in the brain when someone behaves in a particular way. So it's no longer, some sort of like a guesswork.
I see that often with implementation.
Yeah.
So we obviously have convinced now, we have managed to get through all these phases of the brain or these areas of the brain.
Yes.
And we have made the deal, and now we have to implement. And now the users need to be made aware that there's a new system coming.
Yes.
That's where you see the fear the most.
Absolutely. Why? Because when you look at the brain, when you talk about change, once you mention the word change, to the brain, you are saying snake.
Yeah.
And it's a threat.
Yeah.
Because what if I fail? They don't say what if we make it. They say what if we fail, because from the hierarchy, threat or survival comes first.
That makes sense.
You understand?
Yes.
So those are things that I get to explain. So when you talk about change, you need to, how do you then allay their fears? How do you make them feel that they will survive it? How do you make them feel that they will be supported? How do you make them feel that everything is figured out, but the benefits are much more, at the end? And get to understand that change is not created equal as well. When you talk about the neuroscience of change, you're talking about change load, and we talk about change fatigue. Some people are experiencing change load because the change load is high. There are too many changes in their lives that are taking place. And others are changing from change fatigue because these changes have created the brain to go through depletion. They are mentally depleted because of changes. So anything, they don't want to do with any change anymore. So when I help teams deal with things like change management, it's about understanding the brain, not people just reading you slides and whatever. No, you can do this and that, and motivating people, but it's getting people to really understand. So those change agents, because I work a lot as well, helping change agents deal with how the human brain works so that they can handle change better. Because the brain is meant to, to sort of like to survive.
Yes.
So if you don't make me feel that I'm going to survive, then what do? I end up being aggressive. And people end up saying, people don't like to change. The brain is wired that way. The brain is not wired to thrive, but to survive. Let me say that again. The brain is not wired, it's not hardwired to thrive, but to survive. So for it to thrive, you need people to be trained and to understand how to work against the brain's nature. Because it's how it's been wired for the longest time. It became its nature.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So that's information that top leaders don't even have, and people just decide that we're going to do this and they go for it. And that's why, statistically, I think there's something that came from the Center of Creative Leadership as well. It's part of it. There was something from Harvard Business Review as well. It indicates that over 70% of change initiatives, they fail
I read that one. I read the
You
article.
understand that?
Yeah,
That's
I remember
exactly.
that. Yeah.
And why do they fail? Is because once people do things under duress. They are told you're going to do this or you're going to go. And they do it, and then soon they creep back to their old ways because it doesn't make sense to them. So until therefore leaders, I help leaders to help and explain to teams how things go and how do habits change. Because until we understand the science of that, we are lost. So I think it's that.
So what we generally do is, from an in-control perspective, is we leave everything as is.
Yeah.
Initially. So they might have an Excel spreadsheet. We just digitize the Excel spreadsheet.
Yes.
So instead of inputting into an Excel spreadsheet, you input into the platform.
To the system.
That's all we do, just for now. Okay, just so you get used to it.
Yeah.
And then we slowly start using that data input to do other magic, and all of a sudden we start to show an ROI. But you can't immediately change everything. You'll disrupt that complete company.
That's good, because what the brain does, it needs to feel, because it always feels like it's being attacked.
Yeah.
So when you are able to be there to help people, to take them through the process and guide them and be there, then it helps them to feel at ease and say, wow, they're going to get to a point where they say, but this is not bad after all. You understand that? So they go through that. Otherwise, I mean, like, they will just feel like, you know what, we're being attacked, we're going to fail here. So it doesn't work like that.
I agree.
Yeah. And maybe finally, I think on my side, you know, as Billy Meysel, I mean, you've been around, I mean, in your field, I mean, you're one of the stars, you know, call it the top 10%, you know, in terms of sales. Now, how would you like to be remembered, you know, at the end of the day, when they say maybe in a sentence or two, you know, when people talk about you in your industry, what would you like them to say? What kind of legacy would you like to leave behind? Because I think we all live to leave that legacy. We all live to make a difference. But things are going to be said about us. So what will be said about you?
I would like people to say that I was a good leader, that I had vision, that I was a good mentor, and that I did things the correct way, ethically, and always to the best of my abilities. Basically, when I come into a situation when I leave that situation or that company or whatever job that I had, that I left it in a better state. That's all I would like.
Wow. That's what is called steward leadership. You know, when I talk about that, you know, steward leadership is all about this obligation that you feel within you that whatever you touch must turn into gold.
Yes.
That whatever you touch must be in a better state than you found it. That's what, like a steward.
Yes.
You know, when you get in there, you take it as if you treat it with kind of respect and dignity and make people realize that, hey, this person was a good example. So I'm so happy to have had you here, Bill.
No,
thank you so very much.
It was really interesting. Thank you very much.
And I think for us, I mean, mainly for our listeners and our viewers, this is something that's very important, that we cannot just talk about mind transformation. We cannot talk about helping leaders out there. We cannot talk about influencing those upcoming leaders and those who want to be the best in what they do if we cannot be able to tap, you know, from the experiences of those who've been in these levels of positions, who've gone through these paths, because it's something that's very important, that we have to be able to learn from the masters. We've got to be able to learn from others who have been down that road, because if we don't do that, we're going to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. And once again, I am Velindaba, the neuroengineer, and I'm all about transforming these minds from a place of mental darkness to mental light. Because in mental light, that's where our dreams and that's where our greatness is at. And I'm sure we all want to be great. And do catch us on our next episode. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you very much.